So if we work together, we're probably going to have some type of database server to store some type of data. So let's say we have employees that work for us.
Okay.
We're going to store our employee information inside of this SQL database server right here. This is us down here.
Okay.
When we want to get information out of that database server, we're going to use the SQL language. We're going to send SQL queries to the database server when we want to get information out of it. Why? Because that's the language that database server speaks. When you want to access things from it, you need to speak SQL, not Spanish, not French. You need to speak SQL. People out here should not be able to access that database server. Why? Because it's not theirs. It's ours. No one should have access to our database server. This web server, yes, it should be able to communicate with the database server. Why? Because the data the web server needs, it's on it. The data that web server needs is on it. So the web server has access to the database server. It needs access. It needs access to get the information from it. Threat actors out here, they understand that. They understand that the web server is going to speak SQL to the database server. Or better yet, threat actors understand that this web server needs information from this database server. They can communicate to each other, the web server and the database server. They have access to each other. So as a threat actor, I'm going to try and send SQL queries to this web server to get information from this database server. So this right here, what we're looking at is a web application. It's taking a login and password. These are the input fields. I don't have a username and password to log in here. However, I'm hoping this is vulnerable the way we're looking for it. But if this web application is vulnerable to SQL injection attacks, we can go ahead and give SQL queries in here instead of an actual username and password, hoping that this response, the database server, acknowledges our SQL query. So instead of doing admin and then a password, because we don't know if admin is a user here. See, let's just do admin. Is that gonna work? Doesn't work, right? Okay, so let's put a SQL query here. Why didn't that work? Maybe it's the wrong password, or maybe the username admin doesn't exist. One or the other. So here's a SQL statement, which equals true. Username right here equals true. It doesn't matter what password we get. But what are we telling this? What are we telling the web application or the database server? We're passing this SQL query to a web server. The web server is going to pass it to the database server. The database server is going to read this. The database server understands SQL. The database server stores all the username and passwords, hypothetically speaking, for this situation. Since it understands SQL and we are giving a username of that query, and the query means true, it is going to try and log us in as some user that's in this table already. So if I hit enter, hopefully this works, I have been logged in. Okay, I've just been logged in. I'm inside of the portal now without giving a username and password. Why didn't I have to give a username and password? Because I gave it a SQL query, and the database server understands SQL. It understands that this equals true. See, what you're probably trying to do is break down this logic down. That's homework for another day, right? But what this essentially means is true. Give me everything that matches 1 equals 1. Give me everything that is true. Give me all the usernames that is true. And all I did here was copy and paste this here. So give me all the passwords that are true. If this is the table that it's looking at, user 1, user 2, password 1, password 2. If this is the table that it's looking like, it's just going to give me the first entry. This is true because there's data here, right? The username is true, there's data there. The password is true, there's data here. If it was an empty spot, this is false. There's nothing here. But because we said log me in as user true and password true, is going to log me in as the first user 1 using the first password 1. That's SQL query. We're sending this query to the database server through the web application. Make sense now, or make more sense, Keenan?
It's making more. I know I gotta see it more, and the more, I'm gonna ask you more about it almost every time. But that definitely helps out. Because like the more we going on with this class, the more it's bringing back some of that old stuff. And it's just like, man, how they broke it down is, like you said, it's not only the way y'all do it is in more structure, but how he put it across, it was more harder to grasp.
And you're saying you're saying that the class you took previously, it was harder to grasp this concept?
Yeah, like he didn't break it down in that light. Like he just gave the SQL, but like breaking it down to everything what it means. Like no.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing about. I mean, you know it. Kenny knows. Like in the class, it's really about expertise when it comes to breaking down these topics, and I try to break it down in the kindergarten level blocks, right? Without all the complexities. And as we go through the class, I start adding on the extra details here and there. But I appreciate that, man. Hopefully, everything else that you learn is going to start making more sense as well. But this isn't something that we're just going to brush over. All right, SQL injection. Injection attacks, you do see them in the top 10 vulnerabilities that OWASP puts out, especially cross-site scripting attacks. So as long as you understand what the goal of the SQL injection attack is, you understand what we're using to do it, right? The goal is to get data or information out of its database, specifically a SQL database server. And we're doing that by sending SQL queries through input fields. They don't always have to look like this. There are a bunch of SQL queries out there, right? You can just Google SQL query cheat sheet. Okay, if you want to get more familiar with SQL query or SQL injections, you can go ahead and start studying them. However, it's not necessary to pass the exam. Okay, like I'm familiar with SQL because of what I do. And this is why I tell a lot of people, when I tell most new people, everybody wants to get their hands exposed to everything, so they try to go get all the certifications out there. Whereas in reality, you get the Security Plus cert or whatever certificate you're studying for. After you get certified, understand those skills, get into an entry-level position, develop those skills. And as you're developing those skills, you're going to get exposed to all these different tools. This is why I'm familiar with SQL. Not because I wanted to be a database engineer. It's because I was doing security. And at some point in time, I had to start locking down database servers. I had to start understanding how they communicate back and forth. What ports are they using? What ports need to be secured? What ports need to be closed on this database server? You're going to get exposed to all these things if you want to. You will, right? All these things that we talk about are in every organization. If you want to get exposed to it, you will. But you want, or I'm not going to say want, you should do it step at a time, right? That's what a lot of people, I don't want to say they overlook it, but they fail to realize that this is a marathon. You can't just learn everything in this field right away. There's too many things, and it's going to keep changing. It's going to keep changing. That's why we're focused on the fundamentals, because the fundamentals don't necessarily change. Right? It's the same 2 steps I'm taking to shoot this basket. All right, I can't take 4, I can't take 5. It's the same 2. And with SQL, cloud technology, DLP, endpoint security, network security, vulnerability. If you want to get more exposure to these, you will. You definitely will. You have many opportunities. So here, it's a bunch of cheat sheets out here. I have some myself that I keep, especially when I'm doing my own fuzzing. But this is SQL, man. I appreciate you bringing that up, because now we have some good material that we can go ahead and send over to our guys to cut up and use this video to help other people out.